Hello, everybody, and welcome to PowerToFly's latest webinar. This is the third in our series of Google Analytics webinars. My name is Lexi Kent-Monning. I'm the social editor here at PowerToFly and your host today. So as I said, in our Google Analytics series, Vanina, our senior data analyst, has showed us a number of tips and tricks for Google Analytics. And we heard a lot of feedback from the previous two webinars that people would love to see how to set up Google Analytics. So that's what we'll be showing you today. We're going to show you how to set up your account and how to get tracking data within Google Analytics. So just a couple of things before we get started. The first is that we are recording this session. So you'll be getting the video in your email in the coming days. So if you need to drop off before we're done to it when you're setting up your Google Analytics account, we'll have that video for you. And then also you can find our previous webinars on Google Analytics on our YouTube page and our social media pages, all at PowerToFly, and we have links to all of those. You can also email us at hi@PowerToFly if you're having any, hi@PowerToFly.com, of course, if you're having any trouble locating any of those. And then the other housekeeping item is that we would welcome your questions. We'll do a Q&A at the very end, but please feel free to send your questions while we're going with the presentation. We've got Courtney, one of our talent managers, monitoring the chat roll, and she'll be sending us your questions so I can ask them of Vanina once we're done. So again, if you're just joining us, this is PowerToFly's third webinar in our Google Analytics series. Today we're showing you Google Analytics from scratch. Please welcome our guest and our senior data analyst and guru in all things data, Vanina.
Thank you, Lexi, for the introduction. Everybody, I'm Vanina, and I'm very excited to be with you today for the third time and talk about Google Analytics. And this is going to be a very interesting, fun, and I hope informative webinar, because those were the questions that we were always during the first two webinars. So how do I start? How do I install Google Analytics if I don't have a site even? And if I don't work for a company that uses it? And today we are going to answer those questions for you and hopefully have more people go into the field of web analytics. So our first Google Analytics webinar gave all the basics that you need to know about where to find what data in Google Analytics, how to download reports, how to schedule reports, and so on. So this was really the 101 of Google Analytics, assuming that you already have access and account to it. The second webinar was more intermediate to advanced level, some tricks, including Google Tag Manager, which we are also covering briefly today. And it was just slightly higher level, building up on what we talked about in the first one. And now today we are wrapping those two together, and I'm showing you how you can start. So imagine you don't even have a site, you were never into Google Analytics, you just feel it's an interesting topic and you want to explore it. We did the research for you and we came up with several solutions that are totally free, so you don't have to pay a cent. And you can try it, you can build your own site, you can connect Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager to it, and you can see if that's something you would like to do and think of career change or something else. So, okay, let me start with my slides. And as usual, we are going back and forth between our slides and tools that we are going to be talking about. So excuse me for this disruption, but I believe it's very important to show you the live tools rather than just the screenshots into the slides. So these slides we are going to send to you after the webinar in a follow-up email. So don't worry about all the URLs and everything, you are going to receive a copy. So what we will cover today. First, we would start with everything you need in order to start and do an account for both Google Analytics and Google Tag Management, and also how to set up your site. So we would imagine here that most of you don't have the technical background to do a site, or that you don't have the experience to do a site. So we would say a couple of words about site structure in general and how you can do it. And then we are going to cover 3 different cases. So the first case is implementing a site through Google Sites, which would work with Google Analytics only, no tag manager. And for this case, you don't really need to have any technical background. So everybody can do it, including your grandma if she's on the net. Then the second case would need slightly more advanced technical skills, but we believe if you follow all the steps we would show here, it's gonna be easy, and it would involve a free hosting solution with a free account for WordPress. And in there, we are going to use plugins to install Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. And the third case is pretty much an alternative of the second one, so it requires slightly more technical skills than the first case. This is another free domain hosting site where we are going to be building another site from scratch and again installing Google Analytics and Google Tag Management. I'm also going to show you once you do your site how to track some buttons in it, for example, just to make it more interactive and more fun than just viewing your traffic information in Google Analytics. And I'm going to show you how you can test and debug everything that you created as tracking in Google Tag Manager. And finally, I would show you where to find all the data that you just implemented being tracked in Google Analytics. So,
Vanina, sorry to interrupt. I think you need to share your screen again. I'm not seeing the slides.
Oh, you're not seeing the slides? Okay. Just a second. Let me try to reshare it. But you didn't really miss anything. It was just the site, what to expect. Okay, are you seeing it now?
Yeah, there we go.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, that was the slide that you missed, but that was just an overview. I covered everything. So, and thank you, Alexi, for bringing that up, because this is important here. This is a link of all the URLs and all the accounts that you're going to need. The first part is all the Google tools. So don't worry about copying those links right now, because as I said, we are going to send you a copy of the slides, so you would have all those URLs. But yes, so we would, for the first part, for all the Google tools, you only need a valid Google mailing account. And access immediately to Google Sites, Google Analytics, Google Tag Manager. And then you would need to do 2 registrations if you decide to go with those 2 free hosting solutions that we researched for you. You don't have to. You can go for a paying solution, because paying solutions are normally much easier to work with. They look much, much better and are more robust. But in case you would just like to try Google Analytics without spending money, you can just feel free to use the 2 solutions that we offer for you. I just want to say here that those 2 sites we found after doing a little bit of research on all the products out there that are offering free domains or subdomains and free hosting, because not every site out there is doing it, and we're not affiliated in any way with them. We are not getting any money for sending them traffic or things like that. They were just coming up relatively high in Google search, and we found positive reviews on them, and we tried them personally. So that's why we decided to stick to them. You don't have to. You can do your own research, as I said. Feel free. And then let me just start briefly with talking about what do you need in order to have a running site. So if you want to go for web analytics, not only Google Analytics or Google Tag Manager, but any other web analytical tool, first you need to start with a site. And that's going to be pretty much any site. It could be a blog, it could be just an online shop, anything, really, any page that's on the web. But you need to be able to access the source code of that page. You pretty much need to be the administrator of that page. So let's say you don't have a page and you want to create one, then you need to have three things in mind. If you're creating one, you need to have a domain. That's pretty much the address. In our case, that's www.powertofly.com. So that's the web address where people can go and see your page or site. Then you need a host. That's pretty much just a space on a server where your site lives. So where all your content, all your structure files and so on, formatting files, everything is there. And then you need a site building tool, or you can just build it yourself, program it from scratch if you don't want to use one of the ready available marketing solutions there. And of course, you need content for that. But for Google Tag Manager and for Google Analytics, as I said, you would need to be the admin of your site so that you have access to the source code, because there are two pieces, two small JavaScript pixels that you have to paste in the code of your website. And there are a lot of solutions out there, like a free WordPress account that is hosted on WordPress.com. So you can have a domain there, which is something like mysitewordpress.com. But unfortunately, the free accounts there won't allow you enough control over the source code of the page. So with such a solution, you won't be able to install those tracking pixels and connect Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager to your blog or your page. So whatever solution you decide to go for in putting up your web page online, just make sure you research if they support Google Analytics and Google Tag Management. That's, of course, if you decide to do it on your own rather than with the solutions that we designed for you. Okay, so now let me start quickly by telling you how to create a Google Analytics account. You just need to have your Google account already, and then go to google.com/analytics, and there is you're gonna see a sign up button on top right. So just click it, and it's a drop-down list where you can see a few tools, and Google Analytics is in the middle. So when you click it, if you haven't used it until now, you're gonna see this print screen that I attached to the presentation. You need to click the sign up button, and then you get a pop-up where you need to enter a little bit of information. It's actually pretty quick. You need to have your website, name for the website, and the URL. So before you get your Google Analytics account, it's good to have your site, or at least one page of it, running so that you know the site URL. And then the one thing that I want to stress here is if you're not just playing around, if you are thinking of doing a real site that you would be using and you just want to install, help your site performance, like a blog or so, make sure you choose the correct industry category. And you see here there is a drop down which says industry category, select one. Why is it important? Well, because there is something that's called benchmarking reports in Google Analytics, and they show you information on sites that are similar to yours, eyes, and also in industry. So let's say you do a site, blogging site on, I don't know, your favorite news show, and you put the wrong industry, for example, you put the food industry, then your website performance would be compared at the end to and that's comparing apples to pears and not apples to apples. So if you're not just around, as I said, but if you really want to use it, make sure you categorize it correctly. And then you are going to see a bunch of checkboxes that you can check. It's about what kind of data sharing you agree to have with Google. The more of them you click, and we recommend clicking all of them, the more of them you click, the more data you're going to be able to see, because that's how it works. If you agree to anonymously share your data, Google shares data with other companies, from other companies with you. So we recommend that you do that. And then there is a blue Get Tracking ID button at the bottom. And once you click it, you're already registered, and you will see your tracking ID, which is this number starting with a UA. And then the second piece of it is the actual JavaScript code that I told you about. So these are important pieces of information. You don't need to record them because they are always going to be under the admin area of your Google Analytics, but you would need those in order to implement tracking to your site. So we are going to come back to this later. Then I want to show you how you do a Google Tag Manager account. It's the same way, same URL, just from the drop-down list of google.com Analytics. Instead of Google Analytics, you choose Google Tag Manager, and I believe it's towards the end of the list. And again, you just need a name for your company. You need a name for your container. And because Google allows web tracking for mobile applications like iOS and Android, as well as for the web, we are covering just the web part today because there are a bit more specifics in the mobile tracking. So we don't want to go into that right now, but we are going to stick to the web one. So just make sure you select the web. And that's it. Once you accept the terms and conditions, you're going to get another pop-up, which will be Google Tag Manager tracking ID. And it's this one, the one that starts with the GTM. So you also need to make a note of this one because you're going to need it later for when we implement our site tracking. And probably here to tell you what's the difference between Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager and why we are talking about both of them. So Google Tag Manager is just a tool that lets you make more use of Google Analytics. You don't need you some extra information, which is the customizable information into your site. All the buttons, for example, all the button clicks, all the forms submitted, all of this content will normally not be tracked under a regular Google Analytics. A regular Google Analytics will only track information about page views and users and where your users are coming from, but they won't track all the user actions and events on your site. If you want to track all your user actions, then you need to work with Google Tag Manager. And now let us go to the first case that we discussed, which would be the easiest one, where you don't need any technical background. You just need a site, and pretty much you just go to sites at google.com. And here is a site that I created. It took me really 5 minutes. It's very easy. No programming. I didn't write a single line of HTML or any other programming language here. The only way you do it, you click create page and you name your page. I'm going to name it like page 4. And I want to put it under home page. And that's it. You now have another page created for your website. And this is your site, and this is Google Analytics popping up already, showing me some information about my site. This is your site. It has a home page, and it has right now 4 pages under it. So I'm not using any template here, just blank site, but Google Sites, they have templates. And I know it's not a very pretty solution compared to other providers out there like Wix.com or GoDaddy and others. Google Sites is ugly, let's put it mildly. But the good thing about it is it's, first of all, totally free, and second of all, as I said, even your grandma can work with it. It doesn't require any technical background. So everybody can make a site like this, and I just want to show you how easily accessible Web Analytics is. So the only thing you need to do to connect Google Analytics to this site is you click under the settings, then you go to Manage Site, and under Manage Site, you just browse down, and you are going to see, in your case, under Statistics, it will be No Analytics selected by default. So what you need to do is click Use Google Analytics, and once you choose it, you're going to need to put into this line here the Google Analytics tracking ID, which you already have after registering. And if you forgot your Google Analytics ID, I can show you how to recover it. So you log in under your Google Analytics account, you go to the admin area, and under property, there is tracking info. Under tracking info, you click tracking code, and that's it. That's the ID. and that's the tracking code. That's like the tracking pixel. For some sites or some tools, you're going to need just the ID, which is this one single line. And for others, you're going to need the full tracking pixel. Normally, each tool would tell you what they expect to get. And once you do it, you just click save, and that's it. Nothing else. And then your data. Let's now open page 1. Your data would immediately appear in Google Analytics. Let's go to reporting. We go to real time, and we go to overview. And you're seeing right now, it's following me. And there is right now one active user, my location in California, and on page 1. And now I'm going to go to page 2. And you're going to see it will change here to refresh, and it's going to say page 2. And that's it. It says now page 2. We can do the same, go to page 4, and then it's going to say page 4. And remember, we just created page 4. We will just have to refresh. And that's it. That's how simple it is. Really just a single line where you put the ID, and now your site is connected to Google Analytics and is tracking all of the information that is default to Google Analytics, which I will show you. Under the audience report, all of the reports excluding custom, the custom variables and user defined are that's content that you will fill with Google Tag Manager if you decide to do so. If not, then all the information on your users, the user explorer, the demographics, interests, the behavior, geolocation, and so on, the technology of your users, all of this is available just with this single line of Google Analytics tracking ID. Then under the acquisition part of the reports, all of them are available without Google Tag Manager. And under the behavior part, everything excluding events. So really, if you decide to go with this solution, only Google Analytics without Google Tag Manager, you're going to have pretty much 90-95% of the information in Google Analytics already available. Now, if you want to go a step further, let's go to the other case, which is the WordPress. I know a lot of people like WordPress because it actually gives you very sleek looking, very nice looking websites, and it's easy to work with. However, as I said, if you go for the free WordPress account, which is hosted by them on their WordPress.com site, it's not gonna work with Google Analytics. For Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, they require you to do the business subscription, which is something like $25 a month, if I'm not mistaken. However, there is a workaround, and you can do a self-hosted WordPress site, which means you would need to take care of your domain and your host, and then you can use WordPress as a site building tool. So we're doing it here. One way is to go to this awardspace.net. They do offer some paid subscription plans, but they have a free one, which is their last one. And you just click, you do a quick registration there, and you're done. You can start creating your site. The only thing that I want to note, because it's not very obvious in their website, is don't put any domain name here when you register. If you put a domain name, you would have to go under the check availability and register, and for this you have to pay. They will give you, if you don't give any domain here, in the next step, they would offer you a free subdomain on their hosted by them. So it's not gonna be a pretty domain, it's not gonna look fancy. That's how it looks in my case. Google Analytics at PowerToFly.mypressonline.com. So it's not like Google Analytics at PowerToFly.com only, but you see their subdomain here. So as I said, it's not a pretty URL, but if it's just for training purposes, that's absolutely fine. And the nice part is that it's free. And once you do, once you finish the registration and you confirm your email address, then you would see a tool once you log in into your dashboard, which is called Zaki Installer. And this Zaki Installer, when you click it, would help you install WordPress. You just have to click next, 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 and that's it. You would install WordPress as a site building solution. Once you do that, you're going to have this WordPress dashboard that you have seen if you've already worked with it, where under posts you can add your sites or your pages and create your site. And then to connect your site, I've already done it. I created like a homepage and 2 posts. What you need to do as a next step is connect Google Analytics to your site so that you are able to track all the traffic information, and Google Tag Manager if you want to track all those button clicks, for example. And how do we do this? In WordPress, you go under dashboard and then under plugins. There are other methods as well, but I would try to keep the level of technical skills required down to a minimum. So that's why we are going to do it with the plugin. And when you go under your plugins, you would not have the plugins installed, so you would have to go to add new. And there is a search where one of the plugins that I used is called Header and Footer, but you can just search for a plugin on Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. It doesn't matter, they all do this. Header and Footer is useful also for other things if you want to control some information that's in your. That's why I decided to go with it, and it has also big, well, as you see, 5 out of 5 stars. So you just have to click to install it. Like I have it installed, but in your case, it's gonna say install now. And the other plugin you would need would be for Google Tag Manager. You can just type Google Tag Manager, and any of the plugins there really would work. So I think I just so yes, after you install those plugins, you have to go back to your plugins, installed plugins, and then you would have to activate them. So to click activate on each one of them. Once you do, they would be active. And then you can go under settings, header and footer. And that would be here the place where we add the Google Analytics tracking pixel. So remember, the tracking pixel is in your admin area. And oh, come on. Yeah, sometimes Google Analytics real-time reporting can be annoying. Okay, you go under tracking info, tracking code. And this code here, this piece of code for Google Analytics, you have to copy paste it and go under section and just drop it here, section injection. And then you have to click save at the bottom, and that's it. Your Google Analytics is already connected. Then to connect your Google Tag Manager, every plugin, once you download it, it tells you what to do. And the Google Tag Manager plugin said that it's gonna add in settings, under general settings at the bottom, it's gonna add a line, and that's the line, Google Tag Manager ID. If you don't go with this plugin, but with another plugin, you would have to research where in the settings you have to enter the ID or the whole pixel. And in this case, it requires just the ID. And the ID you can find when you log into Google Tag Manager. You go under admin, and then you go install Tag Manager, and you need this number, the GTM / and then this combination of word letters and numbers. And then you need to drop it here under the general settings and click save, and that's it. You've already connected Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics to your site. And the good thing about this tool here was that if I selected just the random template, and the template was already filled with buttons and with some information, so I didn't even have to do anything on the site myself. It took me really 30 seconds just to change here the title, and I had a site with which I can start playing right now and implement tracking. I just want to show you that this thing works by going in Google Analytics real-time reporting overview. And now it shows you just this slash, which means homepage. And if we want to see homepage of which site exactly, I'm going to click now to post to, because then we should see our new post. And our new post, let me refresh. Yes, we see our new post. So this is the correct site being tracked right now. And again, if you just see the slash, it means you're in the home page, and it shows everything after the basic URL of the website as active page. So now I wanted to show you, if you would be trying your hands with Google Tag Manager, and that's your site. Let's go, and what you're seeing here is just an add-on of Google Analytics to my browser, and it shows me some basic information on the page, which is handy. You can just go under your browser, add-ons, and then just search for the Google Analytics one. And let me go to the homepage, because I wanted to show you what you can actually do. Imagine this is a real blog, and on the blog homepage, you're going to have links to real articles that you wrote, and you want to track them. So there is the read more button, read more button, read more button, and they each lead to a different article. So that's a very nice thing to track in Google Tag Manager. And what we can do, and the way we start, is we go on the button and we do a right click, and then we click inspect. It depends on your browser. In other browsers, it will be called inspect element or so. And it shows you, we just click the first button, that it links to a page called blogs plus posts, new post. So that's the name of the link or of the blog post where it links to. And it's a class art button. Then we do the same for the next one. And we see it links to a new post too, and it's the same class art button. Then we do the same to the third one, and we see that it's leading to a new post 3, and it's the same class art button. So it depends what you want to do here, but as those 3 buttons are all having the same class, if you want to track each of them separate, it's gonna be a little bit of a hassle, because they have the same class. So you would have to find something else that's unique about them to track them separately. But you can also just track the button with the class art button on the home page and track separately the link where it points to. So then you're going to, regardless of where each person clicks, you're going to track that this was a button clicked to go to a post, and then you would click a level down in Google Analytics to see which post exactly. So I suggest we try this implementation, because it's going to be shorter and leaner. And now let's go under Google Tag Manager, under Container, and then we have to make here a trigger and a tag. And a trigger, what's a trigger? A trigger is just that's like a checklist. Imagine if you are sending your kid to a school trip, they normally from the school, they give you a checklist of the items that the kid needs to take so that you pack the bag. A trigger is something very similar. It's like a checklist, and you're telling the server how to know that something happened, like an event happened. In this case, we are interested in an event which is click, and it should be a click on a button, which is called read more. And we are interested in tracking all elements and just some clicks, because there would be a lot of clicks on this site, but we want to track just the clicks that are containing art button, if I'm not mistaken. Let me just go and double check. Yes, it was called art button. And we also want to track the page URL, because there might be buttons on other pages that are having the same class art button. And that's why we want to track here a combination of the URL with the button class. And that's it. And we are going to call this read on button. So once we create this trigger, this will be really just the checklist with which your server would stay there and listen. And once all these conditions are fulfilled, it's gonna send information to Google Analytics, and this information is called a tag. And that's why we would have to create now a tag as well. And this tag, we can just call it read on tag. Would be a Google Analytics tag. You choose Universal Analytics because the classical Google Analytics is something that was before the Universal Analytics, so probably 3-4 years ago. If your site is older than that, you will be working only with the Universal Analytics. The classical Google Analytics is something that's a little bit more limited. So only really very old sites would have it. So just stick to the Universal one. And then you would need here to tell the tag your Google Analytics tracking ID, so that it knows where to send the information, like to which account to send the information. And as I said, you go to admin, tracking info, tracking code to get your ID number from there. You can also create, if you're feeling adventurous, you can create a variable which has a constant, this number, and then instead of pasting the code every time, just do a click here and select the variable. So that's one option. And this is an event because, as we said, user actions are called events. And then we want here to come up with a naming convention. And this naming convention, it's really up to you. But basically, each event will be having 3 parameters here. It will be have a category, an action, and a label. Normally, most people would do the category. So, for example, in our case, in PowerToFly, we have clients and we have talent. So we have people who are searching for jobs and people who are searching for employees. So we would label our events if they fall under the talent category or the client category. And that's just the naming of the thing that you're tracking. And in this case, we can just call it like home because it happens on the home page. And then the action would be just to read post. And then for the label here, if you remember, all of those buttons were called the same, but they were pointing to 3 different pieces, 3 different articles. So we want to know which article really was clicked. And the way to do it is here, when we create the tag, we will just say we want the click URL. Because once we reviewed it, that's exactly this ahref is the click URL. So when we tell the server, okay, just point to this and remember it, it's gonna know at the end which of these buttons leading to where was clicked. So we just click continue, and the only thing we need to do right now is to connect it to read to the trigger. So that right now, when the event happens, the server would look at its checklist, which is the trigger, and say, okay, check, 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 everything happened, and then transmit the information to Google Analytics by firing the tag. And then Google Analytics would get the tracking ID number from the tag, and we'll get all the information from these conditions here, and then send it and post it on your account pretty much. Then you create the tag, and now we are ready to go. Now the only thing you need to do is here click preview. That's very important because when you click the preview, you can test and debug if your variables are working. So I'm going to get rid of the source code now, and I'm going to refresh the page, and you see automatically you get the Google Tag Manager pop-up, which is telling you what happens on the page and what Google Analytics is able to see in Google Tag Manager. So let me now click on a button, and by clicking on the button, I'm holding my command key. I'm on a Mac. You have to hold the control key if you're on Linux and Windows, I think, so that once so that the click doesn't override this page, it doesn't load in the same window. And now you're seeing I have my tag, which was the read on tag, firing correctly on the page. And this is the one that I did yesterday just to test it, the read more button. So those are the same. If you see it's not firing, it's gonna be showing here down and you expected it to fire. What you can do is you can double click it, and it would show you why it didn't fire. So let us go to the click. When you click it, you can choose values, and then under values, it's gonna tell you which condition was not met. This is another thing. This is another tag. It was not meant to fire, but it tells you that, okay, there was a click, okay, checklist. There was a button containing art button, so checklist, but the URL contains another thing, not just the home page. And that's why it's not a check, and this didn't fire. That's why I told you it looks like a checklist. And in this case, when we go to our summary, it fired, so we are good. Now if you're happy with the result, you can publish it, but before that, you can go quickly under Google Analytics, the real-time reporting, and if you go under events, it's gonna show you here which event took place. So the home page, and then it's tell you the action, which was the read post, and then you can click it further, and it will show you exactly what was the link pointing to. So let me just quickly test the other buttons to make sure everything works. So let's click again the first, click the second, click the third, and as you see, they open a new page. And if we go now under events on real-time reporting, you should see all of these clicks. Sometimes it can take a couple of seconds delay until they appear, but they would pretty much all appear under here. And as you see, they tell us we are right now on post 3 page, and so on. So all the information is in real time, and on the events that you just clicked, it might take some time until they appear, and it would probably take about 24 hours until they appear here under behavior events. So this is normally where your events would appear once they have been correctly classified and collected by Google Analytics. So these are some of the tests that I was doing yesterday. And you see, when you see the event category, then you can click it further, you see the event action. And when you click the event action, you see the URL where it's pointing to. So you now know, out of all the tests that I did yesterday, that 4 pointed to new post 2, 4 pointed to new post 3, and so on and so forth. So that's how you use Google Tag Manager with this solution for building a website. Again, this was just a free hosting website with WordPress site builder, and we downloaded 2 plugins to connect our tracking ID for Google Tag Manager and Google Analytics. And then I showed you how you can track some of the things on the website, for example, these button clicks. And there are further things that you can do through Google Analytics. So for example, all the button clicks, all the link clicks, you can track those. You can track here the reply button, you can track here the post comment button, you can even track the text that people are entering here as a comment. So there is a lot to play with. And again, I just used a template, so I didn't make this site. But even if you don't want to go into the hassle of building your website just for that, just, yeah, do like me. Get a template which already has some information and try to track as much of this information as possible. That's the way to learn. And then I just want to go quickly to our next solution, which was just an alternative of this one in case you don't like WordPress. There is another free solution that we found out there, which is 000 web host. Sign up for them is free, and if you don't have much traffic to your website, hosting the website is also free. They just as the previous guys offer you a free subdomain, and once you do all the installation, and it's not an installation really, it's just a registration process, a rather short one. You need to confirm your email, and then what I did, because I was too lazy to build the site myself, I used their Zero website builder, which pretty much just gave me a template, and I selected the template and played a little bit here with all these buttons and text. And in less than 5 minutes, I had a running site. So that's an alternative to the WordPress, but again, free hosting, everything free. And if you decide to go with this solution, you would have to go to your page, the Zero Website Builder, to connect your Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager information. And the way you do it, you go under Settings, again, Settings, under Meta Information. So a lot of sites will be having this option or a similar option under Settings to enter some meta tags or meta tracking codes. What I did, I took just the Google Analytics tracking pixel. That's it, ending here, and script. And right next to it, I just pasted the Google Tag Manager script. Clicked apply, and that's it. Both of them are connected to the site. Again, it depends on the website builder instrument that you're using, but if the site is hosted by you and you are in control of the source code, pretty much any site builder would have the option for you to put this tracking information. You just have to research where it is. And I just wanted to show you one thing here, and that's the last thing. On the website, when you implement things in Google Tag Manager, keep in mind that there are some very, very tricky buttons. Normally, we would just click on the button, click inspect, and then be able to review the button. But here, for example, you would expect this would have a button class. And yes, it does. However, it's one line above. And this specific button, when you click it, you if you do implementation of the button with a class WB, it's not gonna work, because when you click it and click inspect, it doesn't go to the line above, which is the A class and all the class information. It goes just to the span below, which pretty much contains the click text. So it's a tricky one, and if you don't pay attention to it and you implement it with the WB button as class, it's not gonna track when you click it. So every time, make sure you click and you test and you pay attention where exactly it points to, so that you know what's the active element behind it. And there are some even trickier buttons than this, where depending on where you click on the button, and I'm just gonna show you the Facebook like button, and it's actually loading totally different things. So if you click on the like text, it's showing you a span with some class here and the click text like. If you click on the thumbs up though, it's totally different thing. See, it's this long path and so on. And if you click in the blue outline, it's pointing to a third one here, to a button type submit and so on. So I would suggest click on several locations outside of the click text as well, just to make sure everything is pointing into the correct page element. And if they don't, then it's gonna be a little bit of a hassle for you to track it. So for example, when you click here, the just do it button, when you click on the text, it's different than when you click outside of it. You would have to make sure you track both cases, because some users will click on the text, some users will click outside of the text. And in this case, luckily, they both match, but just keep it in mind, because it's very, very tricky. So that was everything that I wanted to show you today. And now this is just our overview of what we covered today. It was a lot, I know, but you're going to get the recording and you're going to get the slides. And I believe if you follow our instructions, it's going to be easy for you to implement. First, build a site. Then second, implement Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager. And then third, don't forget to play with Google Tag Manager a little bit. That's really where the big capability of Google Analytics is. And this is all the information that's specific only to your website. And the only way to get it in Google Analytics is through Google Tag Manager. So yeah, that's it. Now I'm open for questions, and also if we cannot answer some of the questions, just email them to us, and we are going to make a post on Medium afterwards and send you the link to it, so we would be answering all questions. Thank you, and now I will stop sharing my screen.
Great. Thank you so much, Vanina. That was amazing. That was such a helpful, comprehensive tutorial. So we do have a couple of questions. And for all of our viewers, feel free to put your questions in the chat roll. Our talent manager, Courtney, is there monitoring, and we have a few minutes here for questions, so go ahead and send them in. Okay, so first, how did you learn how to use Google Analytics, Vanina?
Me, I first actually started about 9 years ago with another tool, which at that point was called Site Catalyst and was later acquired by Adobe. So it's right now called Adobe Analytics. So I started with them. At that point, Google Analytics was not even on the market yet. And when I started working with Google Analytics about 3 or 4 years ago, it was very soon after it joined the market. I already had, I knew the other tool really in detail. So for me, it was very easy to switch between the two tools, because once you learn a single web analytics tool, all the others are following the same or very, very, very similar logic. But yeah, for me, when I started my career many, many years ago, trial and error, really. Just at the beginning, try to find the information, like the very, very basic things. How do I see right now how many new unique visitors I had yesterday on the site, or how many people came through social channels? You start small, and then you just keep asking questions and find information. Very useful tools, all the Google forums, YouTube. Just Google the questions. A lot of people have done it before you, and there is a lot of information out there. Next question.
Okay. Great, thank you. Okay, so let's see here. Well, a lot of people are saying that this is so comprehensive they don't have many questions because this is so well organized and comprehensive. But I do have another one here. How much time does it take to get really comprehensive trends once you set up Google Analytics? Days, weeks, months? How long before you can really start analyzing your data there?
It depends on your site traffic. So if you have enough traffic, you might just need to wait like 10 hours or so to make sure all the data arrived, if you're a big site. If you have small traffic, like if you just start and if you create your site, what you would probably do at the beginning, you would be clicking all the buttons and testing it. Then you would send it to your close friends and relatives, ask them to test it for you and to click the buttons. And then probably as a next step, put it on your social networks and ask some more far away friends and relations to help you test it and generate traffic. But pretty much data from the time you do the event, you do the click, until it appears in Google Analytics, maximum delay should be a couple of hours. So pretty soon after you do the tests, all the information will be classified and appearing in Google Analytics. But again, for comprehensive analysis, you need some critical mass of information. If you only had 5 people visit your website last week, well, there's not much analytics you can get out of it outside of really just learning the basics. So just if you go more into comprehensive analysis, really meaningful analysis, you have to make sure you generate enough traffic.
Okay, great. That makes a lot of sense. Thank you. Okay, I see we have another one here. Do you have to put the code for the click event next to that specific source code? I had a hard time seeing where you put it.
No. So for the event, actually, you put the code under Google Tag Manager. So if I'm not sure I entirely remember for which of the things that I showed, but maybe you can just write us an email afterwards and explain a little bit more, and then I can answer with screenshots. But normally the tracking code you would put into the site building tool. So in the case of the WordPress, I put it under the dashboard, plugins, and then settings. There was some settings of the header and footer plugin, plus the Google Tag Manager plugin. And then the code for tracking an event, a click event, you put directly into Google Tag Manager. So you do it the first time you connect both tools, Google Analytics and Google Tag Manager, to your site. That's the only time you put the tracking code pixel into the site. It pretty much automatically goes on each page of your site. And then when you implement events, you only work in Google Tag Manager itself. But yeah, if I didn't answer the question, just give me some more background and then I will do it with screenshots. Thanks.
Thank you. And then also a reminder that we did record this, so we'll be sending it around. So if there's a specific part that you're trying to see more clearly, you can also try to watch the video once we send it to, and send a question too, whatever you like. Okay, another question here. How vulnerable is Google Analytics to SQL injections?
That's a very, very good question. So I would say it's not so vulnerable. It depends on your site, really, because the weak point here is your site, not so much Google Analytics. Google Analytics, they probably have half of the hackers who would be doing SQL injections working for them, so they're trying to prevent it. But the weak point is really your own website. So if you are worried about that, you have to beef up your own security against that. And normally SQL injections would be possible in free text fields on your site. Google, they have ways to detect it. So this information won't really appear on your Google Analytics account and mess up your data, but then those fields on the website might be used for people to get access to your database, for example, or some sites that I know. So it's really up to you in this case, not so much. I wouldn't worry for Google Analytics.
Okay, great. Thank you. And I see that guest that asked about the click event said that you answered their questions, so hooray. All right, well, I think that about does it for our questions. Thank you all so much for joining us today. Again, if you think of any questions later, or if you are setting things up and you have questions as you go, you can always email us at hi@powertofly.com or tweet at us also at powertofly. We will be, as Vanina said, first of all, we'll be sending this recording to you and the PDF of her slides. And then we'll also be creating a post on Medium with this video too. So many ways to reference it in the future. A huge, huge thank you and bravo to Vanina for this amazing trilogy of webinars on Google Analytics. I'm going to show Vanina one more time to say hooray. And thank you to all of you for joining this series and for all of your feedback. The feedback you gave us on the first and the second helped us choose what topics to cover next and what content Vanina wanted to go over. So thank you so much for your feedback. It was really helpful to us. And we hope that this series has been helpful to you too. Thank you again, everybody, so much. Stay tuned for news of future webinars, and remember to hit up all of our social channels. Say hi to me, since I run those, at PowerToFly on everything. All right, that does it for today's Google Analytics from Scratch webinar, and we will see you on the next one. Thanks so much, everybody. Thanks, Vanina. Bye.
Bye-bye.